Return, O Virgin Daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's House of Yosef. Reunion Roadmap is a B'nai Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging House of Yosef here in North America. Shalom, this is Safani Pappas with B'nai Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director, and we're going to part 3 in our interview with Bob Odell. Isn't that right, Al?
Yes, we are. This is our third segment in the conversation Bob and I had about the Echoes Bible and the website echoesbible.com. As of this recording, they've got 3 volumes published so far: Romans and Leviticus, and 1 Corinthians and Numbers, and 2 Corinthians and Deuteronomy. And as we heard in the previous 2 segments of this interview, the idea behind the Echoes Bible is that the New Testament writers, being Jewish, most all of them, and certainly steeped in the Torah and very much familiar with Jewish learning, especially Paul, they were conscious about connecting what they wrote with the Torah. As Bob points out, he contends Paul was intentional about connecting the section breaks in Romans with the Torah portions of Leviticus. Now, I'm interested in seeing how that works out. My intent this coming year is to use the Echoes Bible in my personal studies and just see how it works out. Now, in this segment, Bob and I are going to delve into the connections, the echoes between Romans 10, 1 through 7, and Leviticus 20, 22 to 25. We're also going to find in there some of the echoes that Paul built into Romans 10 from Deuteronomy 30 in particular. And Zafania, this particular segment got my attention because it acquainted me with an element of salvation that we don't really get. This element of salvation, as Bob and I are talking about, has to do with reversing the exile of Israel and returning God's people to their promised land, which is happening with Judah even as we speak. So with that as introduction, let's go on back to Austin, Texas, and continue our conversation with Bob Odell.
And he actually used Deuteronomy as his outline for 2 Corinthians. And then he did Leviticus, Romans, and in these books, when Paul is talking to the Corinthians, now that's a Gentile church, really, and pretty like new in the faith. There's a lot of dysfunction going on in that place, in that town at least, and he's encouraging them, and when you see him saying things like, we need to be sharing the faith more. I hope to be sharing my faith, more out to the regions, to those that haven't heard, and so forth. It echoes the children of Israel going into the promised land. Now wait, how would that work? Well, isn't that the whole purpose of being saved out of Egypt? And is to go and to really go home and to bring the presence of God. It's yes, they had to fight some people. Yes, they had to wipe out nations that were extremely godless and pagan and had reached the level of iniquity that God was going to harden their hearts so that they would be wiped out. But the goal is to get the principles of God into the world. And if they were willing to stay and live with the Israelites They weren't going to get kicked out, and if they would live peaceably, they wouldn't. And the overall culture of Israel was going to be mindful of God. It was going to be based on Torah. So when Paul encourages the Corinthians that to be sharing their faith outward, it's to take the gospel so that people will be saved and changed, and not just to check the box for heaven, but to really be saved. And this is what God wants for Israel too. So salvation is a bigger concept, right? um, and of course, salvation is a national concept with respect to Israel. So what we're going to see here is Paul's going to do it again in this section in Romans 10. We're going to talk, so what Paul says, and then let's see what he's echoing from, and then we'll see some of this parallel. So you want to jump in?
I would be glad to. Romans 10, starting verse 1, and by the way, he's starting once again, like with chapter 9, a prayer, heartfelt prayer for his people. So we're seeing Paul's heart. He says, brothers, my heart's desire and prayer, my prayer to God is for Israel, that they may be saved. For I testify about them that they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. For being ignorant of God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness, they didn't subject themselves to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the fulfillment of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. For Moses writes about the righteousness of the law, the one who does them will live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith says this, don't say in your heart, who will ascend into heaven, that is, to bring Christ down, or who will descend into the abyss, that is, to bring Christ up from the dead. Now that's Romans 10, verses 1 through 7. Oh, wait, should we continue on?
I would wait.
Okay, I'll wait, because, and I
It'll
can
be
tell
too
you
much.
right here, a standard Christian reading without any grounding in the Torah would say, all right, Paul is sad for his Jewish relatives because they're zealous for God, but they don't understand the true revelation in Christ, which has superseded that law, that old-fashioned Torah law thing. And now we have righteousness by faith. But then in verses 6 and 7 of Romans 10, Paul goes back and quotes Moses from Deuteronomy 30.
Yes.
What's up with that?
Yeah, Paul is pretty nuanced, and so chapter 10, verse 1, you read out as brothers, my heart's desire and my prayer to God is for Israel that they may be saved. This echoes Leviticus chapter 20. And there's a section here, Leviticus chapter 20, verses 22 through 25. So here we have 4 verses echoing 6 from Romans. And the first one in Leviticus, it says, therefore, you shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my ordinances and do them, that the land where I am bringing you to dwell may not vomit you out. So here we have saved on the right-hand side with Romans, and on the left in Leviticus, we have the land where I am bringing you to dwell. In other words, Israel is in the process right now in Leviticus. They're on the way. They're not there. But God's saying, I'm bringing you to dwell there. It's the process. So Paul is not putting them in a 0 to or 1 situation. It's not an all or nothing thing. There is a process here that they may be saved, to the full level that Yeshua has intended. So that's what's going on here. Then you read, for I testify about them, they had a zeal for God, not according to knowledge, for being ignorant of God's righteousness, seeking to establish their own righteousness. In Leviticus, you know what? It's talking about the customs of the nations which they're going to displace. And it says, I'm going to bring you into this land. The land where I'm bringing you to dwell may not vomit you out. You shall not walk in the customs of the nation which I'm casting out before you, for they did all these things, and therefore I abhorred them. this is what Paul is reflecting. He's basically saying, okay, Israel, especially the leadership of Israel, has left these principles, did not follow it, um, and um, and is acting in an unrighteous manner. They're still loved. They're still on a path, but they are, at least from the standpoint of the leadership, the major leadership, they're not walking rightly before God. Um, and then um, Paul continues in verse 4. For Christ is the fulfillment of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Now, that's this translation for the World English Bible. Christ is the fulfillment of the law. Now, that's a, sometimes, them's fighting words. It depends on who you are and how you see that. Well, let's get a little view of how Paul sees that by let's go back to Leviticus chapter 20 and read verse 24. So I'll read Romans verse 4, and then I'll read Leviticus verse 24. Listen, Romans 4. For Christ is the fulfillment of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Verse 24. But I have said to you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give it to you to possess it, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yahweh your God, who has separated you from the people. So, what's going on here? Christ is the fulfillment of the law. And on the left side in Leviticus, God is saying, I will give it to you. There's no question. I will give it to you. Despite what I just said, I will give it to you. How are they going to enter that promised land? They're going to have to be forgiven.
Yeah.
There has to be a grace upon them. And God in this verse is saying, I am Yahweh your God. I've separated you from the peoples. I've made my decision. You are going to inherit it. It's final, but yet it is a process. So I would argue this, that the people of Israel moved into the promised land, that which we call the nation state of Israel today, but that region, through the work of Yeshua. It was underneath their movement. It was guiding them. It was supporting them. And it was only through Yeshua that they were actually able to enter that land that had been promised. Yeshua knowing in advance that he was going to be, laying his life down for them. So that's how Yeshua is the fulfillment of the law, because the law says it shall happen. It's in the Torah. The law is not just the 613. It's everything in the Torah. And because it's Torah, law is Torah. And God says it shall happen. So Christ is there. It's undergirded by him, and he is fulfilling that.
Yeah.
Both in times past, and he will do it, in the future. Of course, we'll get to all Israel will be saved too. But
Yeah.
But
there's if I might break in, I'm thinking, first of all, that wonderful imagery from Revelation about the lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
Yes.
To use the King James translation, which I just love. But also, I could enter in here and talk about the new covenant. Jeremiah 31, and then it's quoted verbatim in Hebrews chapter 8, the longest quote from the Tanakh that's in the New Testament. But then Messiah, when he is having that last intimate supper with his disciples, and he has that cup, which he passes around and says, this is the new covenant of my blood. Well, what I'm hearing in that, and then what you just explained here, pairing Leviticus 22 with Romans 10, Christ is the fulfillment. Oh, his sacrificial death, his atoning death, and his resurrection, his blood is the agent that activates that new covenant. And that, since our God is outside of time, what he spoke to Abraham and renewed at Calvary happened in the same instant. So if Christ is the fulfillment of the law, yeah, he's the one who makes it all possible. And that's why I love this interpretation you have, this understanding, that is, we could say Messiah is the one who activates the covenant, who makes sure that God will keep it, even if his human partners are unable or unwilling to.
Right, right. Just like every Gentile who's ever been a Gentile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Bob, another thing, because this is the point that I wanted to make from that stray footnote back on page 66 that belongs here on page 68. But you have so many words on the page, I see you have to bleed it over. I get it. But in our Christian tradition, we have spiritualized it so much that we have forgotten that God ties his covenant to a physical place called the Holy Land, the land of Israel, to a city where he put his name called Jerusalem. And I appreciate the Jewish tradition, and I think they got this one right, that the Garden of Eden was right there. So when you're tying this to the land, and you see in Leviticus 22, or 20 verse 22, that the land may not vomit you out, do my ordinances, obey my commandments. Well, what happened to Adam and Eve? You know, we think of God's there with the cherubim saying, go, get out. Well, I think the land kind of vomited them out as well. So for their protection as well, he had to remove them from that holy garden that he'd made. But then he created a people and he's brought them back. And that's the center from which he's going to be redeeming the whole earth. So yeah, salvation is a process when you think of it that way. It's not just save my soul and I go to heaven by and by. No, no. The heavens are the heavens of the Lord, but the earth he has given to men. So we get to be his agents to remake it like heaven according to the power and the promises that he has given us. And we
That's
get
beautiful.
this. Yeah, well, hallelujah. We get this from the Jewish sages who have received the oracles
Yes.
of God. And we do ourselves a disservice when we cut ourselves off from it.
Can I add that I was speaking with enthusiasm and conviction on how I interpret these echoes, but we say this in the front of the book. We believe that the sections that these two sets of verses together were inspired by the Holy Spirit, like the sets of verses, but the echoes themselves, it's a work of human flesh, and we all have our biases. We all know in part and see in part, and so we encourage people to read this and think about their own connections, perhaps before reading our commentary. In an early version of this, we didn't have much commentary, but the things we were trying to describe were so different for people. They had never even been trained to read two texts in parallel. The Jews, by the way, have been trained to read in parallel for 1,000 years, but we in the Western world have not. We don't know how to read two texts in parallel, and so it's hard for us. And so we ended up having to go back and fill in and try to explain every echo that we had. But we're sort of offering it, we're sort of offering it as suggestions, but not standing on conviction for what all these echoes mean. So so yes, you liked something that happened to be said that couldn't quite fit on the page because we were trying to create more commentary and make some other space back there, and to keep the page counts the same between the two versions, but you're welcome, and folks who read this Bible are welcome to ignore the commentary or wait on it and let the Spirit of God speak to them about how these sections might relate and see what you might see. That's part of the fun.
It certainly is. Hey,
real quick, just to
yeah.
finish this section, there is the word in 6 and 7. You talked, who will ascend to heaven and who will descend into the abyss. There's something Paul does here. It happens a lot. He's quoting something, but why did he choose that one? Well, it turns out over on the left, Leviticus goes on and says, you're going to make a distinction between the birds and the stuff that crawls on the ground. And birds comes first, as in who will ascend, and then the ground comes second, which is, and who will descend. So it's like Paul is just like giving us a little wink. Okay, I chose this quote, which is the primary quote here. But look what I saw over on the left, or on, over on Leviticus side, that that just, it kind of gave me the inspiration to maybe find that quote. So it's just another layer of detail in getting inside to be able to look over Paul's shoulder as he was writing this from the very beginning.
Yeah, Bob, I even missed that until just now. But I mean, here's verse 25 of Leviticus 20. You shall therefore make a distinction between, oh, wait, it follows this. It follows that about, I'm Yahweh your God who has separated you from the peoples. Okay, Israel is a holy people distinct from the nations. All of us from the nations are grafted in. We are also set apart from the nations. And then to this, you shall therefore, because you're set apart, make a distinction between the clean animal and the unclean, between the clean bird who shall ascend and the unclean bird and the clean. You shall not make yourselves abominable by animal or by bird or by anything with which the ground teems, which I have separated from you as unclean for you. Oh, well, you mean this cleanliness and uncleanliness, it actually applies to us now. And now enjoy the music of Eved Adonai. How good and pleasant.
Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the Mid-Rush portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones. With me today is Barry Phillips. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, David.
Little mishap here. We recorded some things earlier today, and apparently something happened to the file. So we're actually recording this a second time. I think the Father maybe wanted us to hear this again. Yeah, guys, interesting things coming in here today. Earlier when we were talking, we started talking about just the history of America, the things that were founded, and how we had to fight for our freedom and fight for all these things. And I was thinking about when we went up to visit you up in Virginia, and we went to some very historical places, and just thinking about the sacrifices that people had to make, and just the battles, and just everything that was going on up there, and just really amazing to see how these men were called to lay their life down for what they believed in, lay their life down for freedom, and how all that played into what we do have today, which kind of made me think a little segue here. When you hear somebody say, so what does it mean to be a man? You think about people who fought, and you think about these brave men, valiant men, honorable men, kind of thing. But scripturally speaking, what does it mean to be a man? And so I was looking back, and I saw where in 1 Kings 2, David, who was a shepherd boy, right? We know the story. He was a shepherd boy, but became king, and he had many conquests in battle. He was a mighty warrior. He proved himself. He was not a shepherd boy, but it wasn't really his own might or strength that he really depended on. When he went into battle in these things, he trusted and relied on Yahweh to go before him in the battle to do this, which is a big key element we're going here. At the end of David's life, what was the advice or wisdom, if you will, that he was wanting to pass on to his successor, to pass on to his son, to tell him, this is the important thing, this is what I want you to remember? The blessing, kind of, if you will, right? So what was he passing on? So 1 Kings 2, verses 2 and 3 says, so I'm going the way of all the earth, I'm dying. Then he says, so be strong and be a man. And so we think, okay, what is he saying? What does it mean to be a man, right? And the word he uses there is interesting as well, because he uses the word for man, he uses ish. He doesn't use like a strong man or a warrior. That's the Hebrew word gever. And he doesn't use just saying be a male, just be a biological male, Zachar, or just someone of mankind, Adam. He uses the phrase ish, which implies, how'd I put it earlier, a man of standing, a man of character, someone who's responsible, and even implied that ish can also be translated as husband. So someone who is responsible, and this is what he says. The next verse kind of starts to define what he means by that. So be strong. So he's encouraging him to be strong, to do something diligently, and be a man in it. And what is it? Verse 3, to keep the charge of Adonai your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, his ordinances, and his decrees, according to what is written in the Torah of Moses, so that you will succeed in all that you do wherever you turn. So it's kind of like, how do you restate something so many times where there's no wiggle room as far as what you mean, right?
Right.
So this is what he's saying. And as I'm looking at this, I'm also thinking that this is the same charge that Moshe gave to Yehoshua when he was charging him before the assembly, and he told him to hazak, to be strong in keeping the word. He said, be strong and be very strong and courageous. To keep the word of Yahweh is what he's telling him to do. So are we, as men today, encouraging one another to walk righteously, to keep the word of Yahweh? Or are we encouraging one another to fall to the world's definition of what it means to be a man, which is definitely not righteous at all. So following the ways of Yahweh is what he's talking about here. So, a couple different directions we can go here. A couple different ways we can kind of fork this off. We already have a few different thoughts that are already kind of out there right now. Barry, which one of these ways do you think we should take this today?
Well, again, he said it'd be an Ish, not Isha.
True.
That's important.
Very.
And I'm also reminded that in Hebrew culture, there is this affirmation of manhood that takes place. Current Hebrew or Jewish culture in particular, it's the bar mitzvah. And, one is recognized as coming into a greater stage of life. In the American culture, we do not have a defined transition from teen years or childhood into manhood. Unless it's you have your first beer or your first physical conquest, or you enter the military, or maybe sometimes you feel like, well, I finally, I'm a man now because I've graduated high school or college or, some degree. But that moment where a dad looks at a son and says, today you are a man in my eyes. We do not necessarily have the American tradition that is well defined. It kind of just flows from one family to the other. How many adult males are out there that have never been told and affirmed in their manhood, and they're still trying to prove that, subconsciously waiting for someone to say, I see the man that you have become, and it's a good man. I think I was in my early 30s when my dad looked at me and said, I'm proud of the man. I just had my manhood confirmed to me, and it made a world of difference. Here, David is looking at his son Solomon, Shlomo, and charging him. The reign is yours now. This has been a violent family. Absalom has tried to steal the kingdom and did so for a short period of time.
Right.
He had slain his brother Ammon, and then there was another brother that tried to rise up and take the throne before Shlomo could take Adonijah, I think it was. So is there going to be a war? Is there going to be violence? Are my brother's going to try to rise up, kill me, and take the throne from me? Exactly what's going to go on here? And we're not necessarily told in this setting how old Shlomo was when this was transferred to him. But in his estimation, in the following chapter, in chapter 3, verse 7, and now, O Yahweh, my Elohim, you have set up your servant to reign instead of my father David. In his estimation of himself, he says, but I am a little child. I do not know how to go out or to come in. I don't know how to lead people. I don't know how to make the entrance into a room. I don't know how to lead an army out and bring them back in. I'm not militarily minded here. Why didn't David groom his son and call him to be a co-regent for a period of time and set him up prior to his death? We're not told. That did happen in other generations, but not in this one, evidently. So he says, I'm ill-equipped. I'm not able. I don't know how to do this. And he prays for a heart of wisdom, an ability to discern Yah's voice, to determine what is the right path to go. He didn't ask for military skill or wealth or riches or protection. He said, I want to be wise. I need to know how to do this. David, it reminds me of Yeshua addressing his followers in Acts 1 just prior to his ascension and saying to them, y'all need to stay here until you be endued with power. And once that takes place, then you can be effective as my witnesses. So don't do this in the flesh. You have to do this in the spirit. And again, it's an appeal to Yah for his investment in whatever we are called and given the responsibility of. How many times have we been put in a situation where we thought, I do not know how to do this. This is way over my head. Well, it's your responsibility. You demand. I may be demand, but this demand doesn't know how to do what is demanded of me. I'm sinking here. And that's when Yah steps in and says, here's wisdom.
We need that. And that wisdom only comes from following him and having the heart to hear his voice and do what he says, which ties back into what you were saying. In 1 Kings 3, when Solomon was praying, he literally says, one of the translations I read says, give me a mind of understanding to judge your people. Well, we translate that as he's asking for wisdom, which he is, but literally in the Hebrew, it says, Lev Shema, give me a heart to Shema. And that is wisdom. To when we say, I just need to hear you, Father. I need to hear you, and I will, what you say, I will be obedient to. I will acknowledge that you are my Elohim. And I mean, that's wisdom. My heart to Shema to you. And that's kind of proven, and that's shown because Solomon, towards the end of his life, the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, 12:13, he says, so this is the final word. If somebody's talking to you and you're like, this is what it all boils down to, right? This is the bottom line of everything. Everything I've just told you is summed up in this. You would think, okay, I need to pay attention to this part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does Solomon say? When everything else has been heard, fear Yahweh, keep his mitzvot. This is the whole duty of man. This is it. Fear Yahweh and keep his mitzvot. And, following the line of all of this through, Yeshua even said something that lines up with this as well. In John 15:10, Yeshua says, if you keep my commandments, that you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. So even Yeshua is acknowledging what it means to live this life. Solomon, what does it mean to be a man? Back to Moshe and Yahashua, I'm charging you, be strong and courageous. To David, to Solomon, be strong and be a man. And even coming in here where Yeshua is telling us not just to be a man, be a servant. And this is my desire for you. And this is how you uphold righteousness. This is how you live righteously. This is how you do your life. And follow him. And that means we do have to lay our life down. We've heard it said, it's pretty cliche, but it's really true. The salvation is a free gift, but it will cost you something daily.
Yes, it will. Yeah. So the spirit-filled life, the anointed life, the obedient life is the life of true manhood. It's not how many days and hours you could spend in the gym and how much money you can accumulate and how many toys you have. All those things that Americans define as manhood. Your prowess, how many ladies are on your arm and all of that kind of stuff. That's flesh. And it goes with you when you go to the grave, and that's it. It's all dust. What lives on after you and what remains after you is a life in the spirit.
I think that's a great way to put it. We saw that Solomon asked to be strong and be a man. And he tells us what a man is. And covenant man is to follow Yahweh.
Yeah.
And all that was in the fulfillment and met completely in the person of Yeshua, who is our example for us to follow.
Absolutely, bro. Well, that brings us to the end of it, David. We would love to hear from you if you would like to offer comments or questions or insights to add to what you may have heard today, or even if you have a disagreement. And you can reach us at Reunion Roadmap at B'nai, B-N-E-Y, Yosef, YOSEFNA.com.
And now, Barry Phillips and the Aleph Tav Band with Satisfy My Heart.
Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Only you know what I need. Yeah. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. I live my life seeking my own way. Life was one filled with pride. Since I found the love of Yeshua, I can say I'm satisfied. You satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Only you know what I need. Yeah. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Lay the stripes upon his back, and on his head a thorny crown. From the nails and a wounded side, blood fell to the ground, and set apart my heart, Yeshua. Set apart my heart, Yeshua. Only you know what I need. Set apart my heart, Yeshua. I'm so satisfied. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Only you know what I need. Yeah. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua. Only you know what I need. Yeah. Satisfy my heart, Yeshua.
Well, that was Barry Phillips and the Aleph Tav Band, Satisfy My Heart, Yeshua. Before that, we had Eved Adonai with Hine Matov, How Good and Pleasant. And Zephaniah, we have our elders, Barry Phillips and David Jones, talking about manhood, which is a fitting topic in this Torah portion that's happening as we're recording this week. Pinchas, a man, a real man, right?
Yeah, he took action.
He he took action. But is that the highlight of manhood?
I actually was thinking that the verse that came to mind was one of the shortest verses in the Bible, and that is Yeshua wept. And so here's a man who is the epitome of what a man should be. And he was very much willing to express his emotions. And I think that somehow that kind of gets lost in the shuffle when we think of manhood. We think of like the stiff upper lip and like, oh, or I have like a battery on my shoulder and you're going to knock it off. Don't you dare. And so we carry like maybe a chip on our shoulder or whatever. But Yeshua was this meek, humble person. And I was just actually hearing also about Gideon, or Gideon, as some know him as. He was very humble as well. And he seemed like wow. According to most people's definition of a man, he was like, oh, what's he being selected to be the leader of Israel? Look at this guy. He seems like a weakling. But then what does Abba define strength in that whole story? It's somebody who's submitted to the Most High.
Well, yes, someone who is submitted to the Most High. That is why David was chosen as the man after God's own heart.
Yes.
Let's see, perfect? Oh, no, not by any means.
No.
Certainly a man of action. If you're going out there as a boy, going after the champion of the Philistines, who is twice as tall as you, oh, okay, that's a manly thing. But how could he do that?
Well, yeah, he knew where his courage was from. It was from Abba himself, Abba the Most High, who gave him that strength to face his fears and overcome them.
That is it. His identity is in his God.
Yes.
So he could state with confidence before King Saul, the God who delivered me out of the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And so there's this holy zeal. And, we get the manly actions, whether it's slaying a giant or comforting a hurting child, because
Yes.
both are manly things.
Absolutely.
Rendering assistance to a neighbor in need, or being silent before God. The answer is be before God. Know who your God is, who you are, and whose you are.
Yes.
And by the way, that's why the Echoes Bible, as Bob Odell was telling us, why it is such a wonderful tool for men and women of God to take up and use to learn that, who they are and whose they are.
Amen.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Reunion Roadmap. We do invite you to come to our Bina website, BneiYosefNA.com, BneiYosefNA.com. Check out our resources. Subscribe to our newsletter. Hit that donate button if you are so inclined to partner with us. We would be greatly honored. And if you would like to become an affiliate of Bina and join our growing network of affiliates, you can start that process right there on our homepage. So on behalf of Zephaniah Pappas, Barry Phillips, and David Jones, this is Al McCarn. Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on the Reunion Roadmap, a production of B'nai Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America.